All right. Well, good morning. Still morning here. This is the first of our sessions we're going to do weekly on different products, different updates. Some are going to be instructional. Some might just be new information. Today is going to be instructional. We've launched an online switch configuration tool, and that tool allows you to basically browse our product line of switches, both managed, unmanaged, layer 2, layer 3, as well as our SFP modules that are available. And you can do it by specification. You can kind of wander through it. You can decode an existing part number if you want to see what a part is based on the part number you were given. And then you can build a list of what it is you like. And again, so a little housekeeping, there's a question and answer area, and Courtney will be monitoring that. So if you have questions, put them in there, and then she'll stop me at the appropriate time, and I will try to address the questions. If the question is really large, or it's kind of beyond the scope of a quick session like this, then we'll follow up with you afterwards. And of course, you can always send questions to anyone at DYNICS or sales@dynics.com, and we'll make sure you get the answer you're looking for. So to dive right in, the website that you find this at is in the URL. You should all be able to see. If anybody can't see the screen, let me know in chat. It's ICS360-configurator.dynics.com. Today it covers our ETH unmanaged switches, our layer 2 switches / SDN switches, our layer 3 switches, and our SFP modules. In the future, this will also be a configurator for ICS360 Defender. You'll be able to come in here and pick the Defender, and then go through a list of options that are available and pick the Defender that you like. There's options for searching, there's options for a catalog, and there is a legend that's available to show you, what's what, how the part number is made up. And so we'll kind of start there. We have a lot of different switches, a lot of different capabilities. So the part number is typically about 14 characters long, and you'll find out, these are the form factors. This is the input power. This list is going to get collapsed a bit here soon, but that's the position that's in. Environmental ratings. Currently, we have one switch that's IP67 by default. It's our small block unmanaged switch. So it looks like an IO block, essentially. All of our IP capable switches or IP switches can be IP67 if necessary. By default, they're IP65. Obviously, all of our DIN and 1U switches are IP30. And PoE type, standard, no PoE. PoE port, so that's standard 30-watt PoE. A booster PoE switch, that will step up 24 volts to the necessary PoE requirements, so that you don't have to have 48 volts or 53 volt power supplies. The switch will take care of that. A side note, understand that you might want to leave a little more space for that switch than a typical switch, and all of the data sheets do cover that, simply because there will be a little more heat dissipation. And we also have PoE++, which is 60 watts, or is that 90 watts? I actually can't recall off the top of my head. And then we have switches that have a combination of both. So there's quite a few options there. Connectorization. AC socket is typically our 1U family. All of our IP rated switches default to M12 L code. So on all of our standard IP rated switches, it's an L code switch, L code power input. Obviously, our DIN switches are terminal blocks. We do have the ability to do 7/8 mini. We do have the ability to do A or S code. Nothing comes that way standard. And if you look through here and you pick that as a configuration option, you'll find that it shouldn't be available because there are no standard switches with it. If you have a custom request, we have some customers who still want the 7/8 mini, for example. We'll create a custom part number for you, and you can order that specific part. Temperature. Almost all of our switches are the extended temperature range. That is -40 to +75 C. Storage temperature is up to +85 C. We do have some that are standard, but that's typically in the 1U range. And all of our unmanaged switches, for example, all of our layer 2 switches, layer 2/SDN, should be extended range. And then the highest speed. What's important about this when you're looking for a particular switch is this is the highest speed supported by the switch. So if it's a 10100 1 gig, it's going to have a 2 for the speed. If it's a 10100 1 gig 2500, it's going to have a 3. So it's important to look at the actual description of the switch and determine what the port makeup is. You might want 100 megabit, maybe you want a gigabit, maybe you need both. And so looking at the description is important, but this number is always the highest speed the switch can do. So for example, in some case, 2500, you'll find it's the SFP modules on a switch, and all the RJ45s are a gigabit. So just keep that in mind as you're building out a switch and looking at it. All right. I'll stop. Has anybody put any questions in there yet, Courtney, before I move on?
Nope, no questions so far.
Well, this should be easy peasy. If you don't mind a quick flash bang, you can go to light mode, right? So it looks like that. I don't know why anybody would. It hurts. Dark mode is the way to go always, but it's there for those of you who like that mode. Other ways before we get into picking switches are you can search for a switch. So if you're looking for something that is layer 2, you can just type ETH2, and it's going to give you a list plus MSRP of all the switches. You can quickly look at the data sheet for that switch, or you can add it to the running list that you're building right now of switches that perhaps you'd like us to quote for you. You can also go by description. So maybe it's 24 volts DC. Maybe I learned how to type, right? And it'll narrow it down to all the switches that include 24 volt DC. Kind of a broad swath of a search. So, but it's there. You can also look at the catalog, and the catalog allows you to look by unmanaged, by DIN, and then you can kind of go through the list. And again, you can look at the data sheet, or you can add it to this running list. You can also export this catalog. So if you're ever wondering what's the latest and greatest, this is the source of truth for that. If you export this catalog, you will get an Excel sheet or an Excel workbook. In that workbook, we'll have multiple tabs. Each tab will be, it'll be unmanaged, managed, and that sort of thing. And then you'll have tables in the tab that kind of talks about each of these switches and what their options are. And it should also include MSRP. All right, so let's get busy configuring a switch. Let's say, for example, and it kind of tells you what you need to select. So if you haven't selected one of these, it kind of hangs out up here and tells you. So I'm going to pick an unmanaged switch. I can do those in DIN. I can do those in IP rated switches or a pass-through style switch. I can pick, so I'll pick DIN, and it automatically picks DC and IP30 because that's the way it works. That doesn't always auto select them because sometimes there's variation. And I can come in here and pick the port densities that I'm looking for. Probably our most common switch is this 8+2. So I'll pick that. That comes in standard or standard PoE, so I can pick that. As soon as I pick that, it automatically picks this. So this is not a booster switch. If it were a booster switch, there would be an option for booster right here. It would say PoE booster switch. And then this would be 24 volt. And in this case, it's the extended temperature range, and the maximum speed is a gigabit. So as soon as I finish my list, all of these are now blue, and I get a valid DYNICS part number. That piece is important. You can put combinations in that don't make a valid part number, but you won't get this green banner. And if it's not a green banner, it's not a part we carry. It's not a switch that we have a model for. That's not to say we can't make something and build a switch that's specific to a certain need. But obviously that's a conversation that goes beyond this configurator. Once you have a valid part number, you can add it to your RFQ, and at any time you can view your running list, and you can export this to a PDF RFQ, Excel, or you can actually email to sales. And so you'll put in your email, your name, your company, and optionally your phone, and then it's going to actually open your email client and stage an email for you that goes to sales with an RFQ, and it lists these part numbers and these descriptions so that you'll know exactly what it is you're requesting. The idea of exporting to Excel is you might want to manipulate the list some, or obviously PDF. You just want to get a hard copy of it. The other thing that's important to notice is if it's a green part number, a valid part number, this copy button becomes enabled. So now I can copy that switch, and I just copied that part number. The other thing that's important to notice is this data sheet button became available. If you click on data sheet, or excuse me, back up. If it's a valid part number and it checks to make sure there's a data sheet where we store our data sheets, because occasionally we might get a switch published before the data sheet is done, although the intent is not to do that. It will actually say, I believe, call DYNICS or ask DYNICS or something if there isn't one. If this goes blue and I click this, then I get to the data sheet, right? And that should work for just about every switch. Well, it should work for, I think the only thing that doesn't have a data sheet at this stage is SFPs, which we're going to correct, although it'll probably be a singular data sheet for SFPs, right? So it'll give you the key features, it'll give you the specifications on it, power, regulatory, different things, mechanical, port densities, how many of what does it have, and then it'll give you drawings. So should be everything you need from a data sheet perspective. And then, of course, you can just save it to your computer or just peruse it, whichever you prefer. And so that's the idea behind the copy and the data sheet. But again, this green bar here is what's important. If it's not green and you pick something that we don't have, it's possible to do on occasion, just given the vast variety of switches we have, but this is kind of like the gold standard. If it's a valid part number, it's something you could call an order today. If you've decided you messed up a little bit, you can just restart and it'll clear everything. So I could go back and pick a layer 2 switch. I could pick an IP rated switch. I'll pick 28D code, 4X code. No PoE on that. Extended temperature, and it's a gigabit. And so I can then add this to my RFQ, view it. And I can see there's 28 M12D connectors plus 4 M12X connectors. It's 24 volt DC, IP65, no PoE, L code, extended temperature, gigabit, machine mount, layer 2 SDN or managed. So all of the switches come configured out of the box as layer 2, and it's a simple configuration change to switch them over to SDN, so they can switch back and forth. And of course, you get MSRP for the switches up there, and that's a pretty beefy switch. So.
Hey, Jeff.
Yes.
We did have a question regarding typical lead times for each product. Will that be available after you select a product?
No, this doesn't, it's not a lead time. The lead time breaks down, it's either managed or unmanaged. Unmanaged switches are typically 2 to 4 weeks. Managed switches are typically 4 to 6. Although, as we build up, we kind of already know what moves the most, and it's that 8+2 I showed you a minute ago, and then we have a 16+4 in the DIN switches, so 16 RJ45, 4 SFPs. Those are going to be probably stocked in a pretty good quantity, and the other switches will start stocking more on hand as we see the need for them. Or if a customer has a particular switch and they're like, yeah, we'd like to go with this switch, we're going to standardize on it, we expect to buy 100 next year, or 10,000, whatever the number is, or 12, we can work with you and your customer, or you if you are the customer and user, and come up with stocking what you need to make sure the lead times are pretty quick. If it's something we have in stock, we can typically turn it around within a day or two tops. So Again, unmanaged switches, we typically say 2 to 4 weeks. Managed switches are typically 4 to 6. But oftentimes, if there's, we had a customer a couple of weeks ago who had an emergency and they needed 8 switches. I think we shipped them 8 switches in less than 5 days. So it's possible. Always depends on what we have on hand, what material we have on hand. Do we have all the pieces, parts to build what you need? But generally, we can also handle those situations where it's like, I need 6 switches tomorrow. Yeah, we'll do our best to make that happen. No guarantees, but we'll do our best. Hopefully that answered the question. Any more questions before I keep moving?
Nope, that was it. Thank you.
All right. All right. So we kind of talked a little bit about, coming in here, finding a switch and looking, pulling up everything, adding it to the list. So, I can come back over here to unmanaged. It doesn't necessarily reset because there are switches. There are some switches that might have similar connectivity options. So it's going to leave the options that are still available for whatever I switched over to. So now if I go to DIN, it's going to be more of a reset. And I can go back to, I'll say 4 ports plus 1, PoE. It's extended. This one happens to say it's standard or extended. Always pick the extended if it's available. And then speed options, right? So this is one of those switches that something in the options that I've picked, we don't have, right? Or I just happen to be lucky and found one that doesn't work quite right. Since we just launched this, we are going to run into that periodically. So this is a good picture too. I should take a note of that. So, but it builds the part number, so you could always ask us about it. Let me take a quick screen capture while I've got this up, because I happen to find one. All right. So again, a great example of what I was talking about is if it's green, it's good. Not green, we don't have that part. Now, you can also show similar. So if you've picked something that we don't have an exact match for, you could show similar, and it's going to give you a list of the different switches and what we have that would be similar in configuration, starting with the most likely to the least likely. So this one is probably what this one was supposed to be, and it's 4 RJ45 plus 1 SFP with PoE, right? So this is actually a beast of a little switch. It's kind of an odd switch because it's a 10 gigabit switch, which is kind of crazy. So it's 2500. I think it's somewhere 2500 up to 10 gigabit. So it's kind of a very cool switch for vision or uplinks or things of that nature. All right, so I can't copy it. I can't look at a data sheet. Let's just restart over. And then let's talk about the other feature that's on the page here called decode. Oftentimes you might get a part number for a switch and you don't know exactly what it is. So if you have that part number, you can put it in this field. Let me grab one because I clearly don't have one handy. I thought I did. We'll paste and I'll decode. And so when I do that, it pulls up. I can go to copy this. I can look at the data sheet for this switch. So it's this is an unmanaged switch, which the ETH-U gives that away. Unmanaged is ETH-U. ETH2 is layer 2 SDN. ETH3 is layer 3. And then, of course, this is the form factor. So it decodes it for me. So this happens to be an unmanaged switch. It's an M12 IP rated switch, 8 decode, 4 X code. And it's a standard switch. And here's the different options for the switch. Now, sometimes if we come up with a custom part number for someone, it's typically we put it at the end. So for example, for a company, and Stellantis uses the Defender. So to give them an example, they have a custom configuration loaded. So at the end of their part number, it's -STLA for that particular product. So this is where you as a customer could add that in so that when you add it to the RFQ, it shows up with that STLA part number, for example. So that gives you that option. And again, sometimes you can just click this and you'll notice that we have a valid part number for this as well. So we have this switch with and without PoE. When it's a PoE switch, it's a booster switch. So it steps up 24 volts. And you can actually watch the part number slightly change. The S is what's going to change. And it's going to go from S to T. Right? And so I could add this to my RFQ. I could add this one to my RFQ. So now I've started to collect these switches. And so that's kind of what the decode functionality works like. The intent here is to make it easy for you to find a switch, figure out what a switch is based on a part number, and then ask for, a price. So if I say view RFQ and I say email RFQ, this is probably not going to work because I'm just sharing my screen or my window here. Right. Let's see. What am I missing? DYNICS? Yeah. No, that might have broke this. No, I didn't. It's just not showing that button as well. So you don't see it. Let me change the sharing real quick. I'll be right back. Okay. So what that did is that's going to send an email to sales@dynics.com when I hit send. And it's going to have, me, my info, and it's going to have the switches I've asked for pricing on with their current MSRP included. So just the idea is to make this very easy for you to get a quote, right? Pick your switches, hit go, and it should create the email for you and allow you to send your quote. Okay, all right. So that's really it. It's hopefully easy tool to use. Again, the green bar of goodness here is your magic number or your magic indication. You have a valid part number you can order today. And there's lots and lots of options for switches. One thing I didn't do was look at SFP modules. They work a little differently. We have a number of SFP modules. These are all industrially rated with lots of options. If you're ordering an SFP module from us, make sure it's one of these, particularly if it's for one of our switches. We do have some previous families of SFP modules, and I think like the part number is SFP-SM. You don't want that for a switch in particular. These are all certified to work with the switches. These are all tested, and there's quite a variety of switches or SFP modules available. So again, you can pick them and tell you it's a valid part number. You can add it to the RFQ, right? So if I come in and look, there's my module. And then you can filter, right? I'm looking for, I need 100 megabit, all right? Well, these are the ones that are 100 megabit. I want it to be copper, okay? There isn't one. So you don't get 100 meg copper. Multi-mode, there's your 100 meg multi-mode fiber. Single mode, right? With different options. Typically, like the only difference between these two is the rated distance, right? 20 kilometers versus 40. I'm gonna gather that, and this, by the way, shows me that this is already in my list because it's currently in the RFQ. It shows you here that you've already added it. Catalog versions down here, right? This is the catalog and the last time it was published. So catalog is version 122, and it was last published on 8/18, so a couple days ago. And that's really it. I don't have anything else to show you. The goal is to make this easy to use, make it available. If you see things that look odd or don't add up, send me an email. Everybody knows how to reach me. We will take a look at what's going on. And every now and then we still run into a part number that was entered incorrectly. But by and large, it seems to be pretty reliable. And I find myself using this tool all the time. So much so that when my browser opens up, it's the first page it goes to. It's the home page. So any more questions? But I appreciate everyone's time today. It's 11:28. So obviously we booked this for an hour, but it's going to take anywhere between 30 minutes and an hour for each one of these sessions. It will depend on questions. It will depend on content. This is a pretty lightweight session for our first one, just kind of showing you how to use the tool.